Hello, his kids! Get up and let's get started!
March in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom on the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, but I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom on the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, but I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom on the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, but I'm in the Lord's army. Infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom on the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, but I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom on the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I'm in the Lord's army. I may never march in the infantry, but I'm in the Lord's army. But I'm in the Lord's army. Yes, sir.
No matter what I'm gonna face tomorrow. I bet my life on everything you say. You turn the light on, now I see forever. Your path is clearer out in front of me. I put one foot in front of the other, keeping my eyes on you. My life following Jesus. I trust you. I trust you. As the world shakes and things break. You are my rock, my everything. As the world shakes and things break. You are my rock, my everything. As the world shakes and things break. You are my rock, my everything. As the world shakes and things break. You are my rock, my everything. No matter what I'm gonna face tomorrow. I bet my life on everything you say. Turn
searched me out, now I'm caught up in your grace. I heard my name across the ocean. You pulled me closer, the current changed. You showed me life, a new horizon, a silver lining, a brand new day. And I might go, I can't find the words to say at all. You're higher than all my ways, I love at you. You opened my eyes to see and poured out your heart for me. My God, you're indescribable in every way. You search me out, now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it, I can't make sense of how your love so undeserving never ends. You give me freedom that leaves me breathless. My glimpse of heaven is off with you. Now there's no fighting this gracious rhythm. I lift my hands high in praise to you. And I might go, I can't find the words to say at all. You're higher than all my ways, I love it you. You opened my eyes to see and poured out your heart for me. My God, you're indescribable in every way. You search me out, now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it, I can't make sense of how your love so undeserving never ends. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh. Perfect love took my place. Only Jesus, only grace. What compares, what comes close? Where you call me, I will go. You're indescribable in every way. You search me out, now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it, I can't make sense of how your love so undeserving never ends. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh.
It's memory verse time. Here's today's memory verse. Isaiah 42 verse 8. I am Yahweh. That is my name. I will not give my glory to anyone else or share my praise with carved idols. Now say it with me. Isaiah 42 verse 8. I am Yahweh. That is my name. I will not give my glory to anyone else, nor share my praise with carved idols. Today's story, we are going to hear about some invisible things. Now, invisible things are all around us, like the air, or radio waves, or the wind. Just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they aren't there. And we are going to see how God literally made an invisible army visible. Are you ready for the story? Because it is going to blow your mind. It is exciting. God opened the servant's eyes to reveal something amazing. Okay, so I have loved our stories. We've talked about the weather and we've discussed how God uses amazing phenomena to display His power. We've covered droughts, we've heard about rainstorms, fire falling from heaven, and even whirlwinds. This week, we're going to talk about fog. Now, not the kind of fog that settles on the mountains early in the morning, we're talking about the kinds of fog that clouds our minds and it messes up our vision so we can't really see what God is doing. I promise you, just because we can't see what God is doing doesn't mean that He is not hard at work for our behalf, hard at work just for you. It is beyond our vision. He is hard at work beyond our vision, working for you and me. And I can't wait for you to hear how He did that in today's story. But quickly, let's review our big picture question for this unit. Does anyone remember what it is? Well, I'm going to tell you. How many gods are there? What is the answer? There is one true God who alone deserves worship. All of God's amazing displays of power remind us that He alone is God. We started our time together on this journey with a story from 1 Kings about how God provided for Elijah and the widow during a terrible drought when there was no rain and the plants were not growing. Then we saw how God sent fire from heaven to prove that He, not the false god Baal, but He is the one true God. Then God sent a big rainstorm to end the drought across the land. And last time we learned that God took Elijah up in the air in a whirlwind, passing on Elijah's mission to Elisha. Today we get to see God's amazing power in Elisha. So take a look and see how God made the invisible visible.
The king of Aram was at war with Israel. The king planned to set up camp for his army at a certain place. Elijah sent messages to the king of Israel, warning him about the army's location. When the king of Aram found out that his plans had been discovered, he thought one of his own soldiers had told the king of Israel where they were staying.
But the soldiers said, "We didn't tell. It was Elisha, the prophet in Israel. He knows what you say, even when you say it in secret." The king of Aram heard that Elisha was in the city of Dothan. That night he sent horses, chariots, and a large army to surround the city.
Elisha's servant got up early the next morning and saw the army surrounding them. "What are we going to do?" he asked Elisha. Elisha said, "Don't be afraid. Our army outnumbers their army." The servant was confused. He only saw the Aramean army. Then Elisha prayed, "Lord, open my servant's eyes and let him see."
So God opened the servant's eyes, and he saw horses and chariots of fire, the army of the Lord, covering the mountain. Then Elisha prayed for God to close the eyes of the Aramean army. God did, and they were blind. "You're in the wrong city," Elisha told the army. He led them away to Samaria. Then he prayed for God to open their eyes, and God did. Elisha told the king of Israel to give them food and water. Then the king sent them home. That army did not come into Israel again.
God opened the eyes of Elisha's servant so he could see God's protection. God is always with us. Jesus came to earth as the visible image of our invisible God. God's protection from sin and death is given to everyone who trusts in Jesus.
God protected Elisha with an invisible army. Isn't that just crazy? God revealed His power and protection in so many ways. Let's see if we can remember them. First, God told Elisha to warn the king of Israel about the plans of the Aramean army. Then, the king of Aram was so angry because he thought one of his soldiers was sharing the army's secrets. I would be angry too. But we know that God knows everything and can reveal this to whoever He chooses. And He chose to reveal it to Elisha. Next, God opened the eyes of Elisha's servant to see the angel army surrounding the Aramean army, surrounding the enemy's army. God wanted the servant and us and you to know that He is always fighting on our behalf. He is always fighting for you and for me. He is always working for our good. He often protects us from things that we are not even aware of, things that we didn't even know about have happened. God is protecting us. I would have loved to have seen the servant's expression when his eyes were open and he saw the chariots of fire surrounding his enemies. Chariots of fire surrounding his enemies. I don't know about you, but if my eyes were open and I saw that, I'm pretty sure my expression would just be complete and utter shock and amazement and an awe of what God was doing or is doing for me. Finally, God blinded the army, the enemy, so they would follow Elisha right into Samaria, right into Israel's city. He had followed him right into their enemies, God's people's center city. When God opened their eyes again, the army was the one surrounded by the enemies because they had been led straight into Israel's city. But Elisha told the king of Israel to send the army back to their own king. And then the army left Israel alone after that. I don't know about you, but I don't think I would risk touching God's people after I have been through that whole ordeal. My favorite part of the story is when God opened the eyes of Elisha's servants so he could see how God was working for him, so he could see God's protection. God is always with us. He is always with you. Jesus came to the earth to make visible the image of our invisible God. God's protection from sin and death is given to everyone who trusts in Jesus. God protects people today. He protects you. He protects me, just like He protected Elisha a long time ago. As we've seen in the stories, God goes to great lengths to show us His power and remind us that He alone is God. He does dramatic and big things to remind us. He loves us so much, and He doesn't want us to waste our lives following after things that can't fulfill or satisfy our souls. Only God knows everything we need. You don't even know everything you need. Only God knows. And He has met our greatest need of salvation through His Son Jesus. Our greatest need is to be saved from our sin, and He has met our greatest need. We saw in today's story that God protected Elisha with an invisible army. The Bible says that God is faithful and He will protect us and strengthen us against the devil, the evil one who is against God, because God is on your side. In difficult situations, we may feel blinded and we may not know what to do. This is why we do memory verses. This is why we practice these things and say them to ourselves and with you over and over again, so that God can remind us of the scriptures that we have learned. And He can use the scriptures to give us next steps or to provide comfort or to bring peace to our hearts through His word. This is why we do it, so that the word of God is buried deep in your heart and He can bring it to mind when we are in difficult situations. God protected Elisha with an, that's right, invisible army. When we can see an illustration, we remember a story better. But sometimes, God doesn't show us what He is doing. But remember, God is always faithful. So during these times when we don't know what is happening, we can trust Him. We can choose to have our faith securely rooted in what He says. Because He loves you, He loves me, He loves us, and He has good plans for us. Remember, He is always with you. He is all-powerful, and He surrounds you with all that He is. He is fighting for you, and He is working for your good right now today. So close your eyes and pray with me. Say, God, You are powerful, but You still come near to us and love us just as we are. Thank You. Help me to trust You more every day. Thank You for working and fighting on my behalf for my good. I love You. Amen.
It's quiz time! Here are the questions we have for you today.
How did God protect Elijah in today's Bible story?
God protected Elisha with an invisible army.
Whoa, that is so cool. Can you remember the answer to our big picture question that we have been learning? How many gods are there?
There is only one true God who alone deserves all the worship.
That's right. Why was Elisha's servant afraid but Elisha not afraid?
The servant saw the enemy's army, but he did not see God's army ready to defend Elisha. Elisha saw both armies, and he trusted in God's protection.
Yes. Did the Aramean army ever come back to Israel again?
No, after the king of Israel sent them home, the Aramean army did not come into Israel ever again.
God is so good. That is all the questions we have for you today.
See you next time.
Have a great week!